So if you know anything about teaching, you know you need a classroom management plan or a discipline plan. What will you do, for example, when a student screams at the top of his lungs, "This sucks," or when another student's phone dings while you're in the middle of comparing and contrasting the works of Tolkien, J.K. Rowling, and C.S. Lewis, and the student says, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Feyen, but all the other schools are on spring break and I just cannot," and she thumbs back a message to her peeps. I never had a discipline plan. Don't get me wrong, my classes were structured. I myself was disciplined, and I read up on them, but none of the plans resonated with me. The idea that first a student must behave and then I teach them never sat well with me. I wanted to teach regardless, or maybe I was just lazy. During the first few weeks of every school year, when the students and I were getting to know each other, I'd have a dream that grizzly bears had come into my kitchen. "Jesse," I'd say in my dream, "there are grizzly bears in our kitchen." "I know, Callie," he'd say, "you let them in." I have no idea why we would ever do this. I barely like dogs. "Well, I don't know what to do with them, Jesse. What do I do?" "You have to feed them, Callie." I'm not comparing the middle school student to a grizzly bear, but you know, the mind works things out when we sleep. Clearly, Jesse knows this even when he's in a dream that's not his, because he stepped right into the metaphor. I fed my students books, read-alouds in particular. Stories were my discipline plan. If the class got too loud, I could so much as walk to the book we were reading, brush my finger on the cover, and the whole class would say, "Hush, be quiet." The boy who yelled, "This sucks," asked if he could bring in his pet lizard when we were reading Holes, a story in part, but a terrifying part, about yellow-spotted lizards. And I told him yes, and the lizard was the size of my arm, and he rested on this boy's shoulder, and I've never seen him so content and calm. This boy who terrorized students was now inviting them all near him so he could share what he loves. My spring break girl noticed that the first part of To Kill a Mockingbird is what she said, a bunch of little stories. She said we needed all these little stories. Jem and Dill and Scout banging on Boo Bradley's front door, Jem reading to Mrs. Dubose, Scout visiting Calpurnia's church in order to handle the big one, the one where the white woman who grew red geraniums in slop jars tried to sexually assault a black man, the one where the black man went to trial and was found guilty for what the woman had done, the one where the alcoholic father attempts to kill the children of Atticus Finch. You wouldn't be able to handle it otherwise, my student who wished for a different spring break said. Once word got out that I was reading Walk Two Moons to my class. It's a story within a story of mystery, a love story, a quest, all wrapped up into a couple of 100 pages. What happened was my students would start talking about it and the other adults would get wind of it and want to read it too. I stayed up all night reading it, they'd tell me. I cannot believe the ending, they'd say. I know, I'd reply. This was the case when the principal came to my door one morning. She was actually subbing as a principal. A few weeks prior to that, she was serving as a teacher's assistant, believing she was retired from the profession, but the circumstances changed, and so here she was at my door, one hand on my arm and leaning in like she was going to tell me a secret. "That book," she said. "You have no idea." It's all she said. The rest was said in the nod we gave each other. But I was talking about discipline, wasn't I? Isn't that how this all started? Tell me how I am to behave. And when I don't behave, how I'm supposed to. Tell me what happens. How many check marks go after my name when I betray my friends? How much recess will I lose if I don't help someone who needs help and also tell others not to help? Will you suspend me if I'm physically and mentally and emotionally bullying up here? What about when I'm the one who's being bullied? What happens when I'm laughed at or when I cry because I don't know how to solve for X and I'll never know? Give me something I know because I don't know myself, how I'll change and shift and grow. I do not know what I'm capable of. Give me something I can depend on because I cannot depend on myself. I left my classroom in the middle of class twice. Once was on September 11th, 2001. I was teaching, and then I wasn't, and I walked down 3 flights of stairs and into the principal's office, picked up his phone, and called my dad to make sure he and my brother were okay. The other time I walked out, because the work was insurmountable, I would never be good enough. I would never come close to doing all I had to do. I left to hide, and the woman who thought she was retiring and was now the principal found me. This time she was in a sharp blazer, crisp button-down, sensible but fashionable heels, and she sat down next to me and listened as I blubbered a trilogy's worth of words about a vocation that was breaking my heart. She didn't tell me I was good enough or that I wasn't good enough. She didn't tell me everything was going to be okay. She took my arm again, this time with both hands, and with the one pushed up my shirt sleeve, and with the other gave the skin on my arm a little squeeze and said, "Jesus is closer to you than this." I worry you think I'm going to end it here, that I am suggesting that Jesus is here. He is closer to us than the skin on our bodies, and so everything is okay. This is not an ending. I'm not suggesting that everything is okay, but I'm inviting us to consider what it means to live a story knowing Jesus is with us when all is not as it should be, or when all is not as we think it should be. This is a story that is dangerous, mysterious, and brutal. It is a story that might not offer rules, but empathy instead. A story that offers us an opportunity to stand in nuance. A story with a plot that twists and turns and that promises that we won't get what we think we deserve or work hard for because we've done all the right things, but instead promises that we will struggle. It is a story for all of us, beloved disciples standing at the foot of a suffering Jesus, listening to his call to help each other home. So as we enter into Holy Week, I made you all a little something, and they're on the table. I thought you might like to have some Holy Week journals. I designed mine, but I thought you could design yours as you'd like. So you have a little cover, and inside are just blank pages. But on the table are the words of the Stations of the Cross that we have not explored yet. So you'll see everybody has a sheet that says help, witness, surrender, compassion, death, love, waiting, and resurrection. We have a lot to go in this week, don't we? And then along with that, I have the scriptures that she paired up with each word. So this week's is help, and it's Mark 15 through 21, or 15:21. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. So what you can do, and you can do this any way you want, you can design it any way you want, but I left one blank page just in case I wanted to do some drawing. I have the scripture on one side, and then I have the word on the bottom. And I don't have any kind of poetry for you today. I thought if you wanted to do a found poem, the blackout poetry, you could do the blackout poetry. You could do the 4 questions that you wanted that we journaled on beforehand. You could draw if you want to. You can journal. You can pray. This is just for you to explore throughout the week. I thought we'd use the remaining time for you to design yours if you wanted to design yours, and then you could start your journaling, and we would have a time to share if you wanted to have a time to share. I did last week. One of the fun things that happened when we were talking was some people admired my washi tape, so I brought all my washi tape for you if you want to play around with it.